What book should be made into a movie? Cat's Cradle. I would love an entire mini-series where each episode is a different Vonnegut novel. Sirens of Titan would be awesome too. I have no idea how'd fit it in an hour though. All the Shah's Men. A true tale of how the US CIA demolished democracy in Iran on behalf of British oil interests and reinstalled a dictatorship that inspired the country to revolution into the Islamic State we see today. A good lesson in the problems of meddling in the affairs of regions we don't fully understand. Mohammad Mossadegh would make for such a great cinematic character, as would the Roosevelt CIA agent. Red Rising series by Pierce Brown. Best way to describe it is, if you took space, Vikings and Romans, and mixed it all together, that is what you would end up with. Priory of the Orange Tree. That could be made into 2 films maybe, or 1 long ass film. Unless Peter Jackson gets on board, then it will be 3 long ass films. Cold Air by H.P. Lovecraft. A decent cry of Cthulhu and Mountain of Madness. Yeah, but the difficulty with H.P. Lovecraft will always be how do you portray something completely indescribable. The Postmortal by Drew Magary. Imagine that we finally find a cure to aging. A genetic therapy that stops time for people, thus rendering anyone how lot can afford the treatment a form of immortal. Itty. What would that do to the world? RLD. How would cultures and governments deal with a populace that never dies? Yes. It's not a pretty story, but I think it deserves a film treatment. And very different from Altered Carbon. Bottom. BTW. It's not far off sci-fi. Fee. Love Drew. His latest, Plan B, would work well as a movie too. Warriors. Like the books with the cats. I know someone already bought the rights to make the movie, but still, I agree so much. There is was a movie in development, but it's even in development hell. I haven't heard any updates in like 2 years. I feel like would prefer a animated series with a semi-realistic style than a super realistic gritty super detailed CGI movie. Like you can't fit all of Warriors into one movie, so I think a TV series would be better. There is a book about it, but the Great Halifax Explosion of 1917 deserves its own Chernobyl-style HBO miniseries. But that just happened. There was no cover-up or clean-up afterwards. So much happened after Chernobyl. So it made for a good miniseries. Negative. The explosion is honestly just the start of the story. A blizzard set in after the explosion. The explosion itself blew out nearly all of the windows in the city. So people were exposed to the cold, even when indoors. The roads were damaged, so response crews weren't able to come into support. All of the communications networks were destroyed, so the city wasn't able to notify others that they needed help. Fires raged and the fire hydrant infrastructure had been decimated, so there was nothing to fight fires with. The event is documented as the first true modern disaster, and the work of Samuel Henry Prince in the explosion's aftermath is widely recognized as the start of the emergency and disaster management field. To say that it just happened tells me you don't know anything about the event at all. Children of Armageddon series. Post-apocalyptic elves and mages drinking beer on their porch after fighting hordes of demons to protect the last remain of their humanity that lives entrenched in football stadiums or real-life US locations made me wish for a movie since the first book. All the Fazbear Fright stories by Scott and Ellie Cooper. They would make a great Netflix series. And there's always been talks about the Jim Henson Company making a horror film with the FNAF vibe. There is a movie being made with Blumhouse and Scott. The FNAF movie. It's happening. Metro series. I know there is a game trilogy. I give 400 hours combined for the 3. Jib Radioactive Subway. As Meat Love Salt by Mariah McCann. About 2 soldiers falling in love during Cromwell's army. If done well, it would win all the Oscars. And the ending was such a gut punch when I read it that I'd love to feel that pain all over again. Twisting the topic, but Malazan Book of the Fallen series in the animation style of Legend of Korra or Netflix's Castlevania interpretation. The sheer breadth and scope could provide multiple seasons/series, and the choice to have it be animated would limit physical location/CGI issues. The Heroes of Olympus by Rick Riordan. Come on. It is one of the best New York Times bestsellers. If we get the right people and the right CGI, the whole thing would be popular in hours. The Cherub series by Robert Muchamore. The Diva trilogy. People don't appreciate Jin fantasy nearly as much as they should. Anything by Tommy Wallach. I seriously don't understand how his books don't have more hype. Fear such a refreshing take on ya. And they are the books that got me back into reading after years of not being able to finish an entire book. I'm one of those people who choose to crush books in middle/high school and just couldn't in college. Ready Player One. I'm still waiting for the first time that book is actually adapted into movie form. I didn't think the movie that came out with the same name was bad. I enjoy watching it at least. I think they could have done a lot better if it had been a trilogy instead of trying to cram everything into one movie though. Newsprints by TZURU. It's a really good book about a female newsie, Lavender Blue, pretending to be a boy who meets a robot named CR. Dooming myself with some obscure ones, but I would say the Saga of Seven Sons series, but that feels more like it would fare better as a TV series. And seeing as we are all apparently tired of Disney making live-action remakes of their animated back catalog, I'd like to see them tackle the Twisted Tales versions. Especially since they also hold the rights to those, A Whole New World, which is basically Aladdin, but Jafar finds the lamp first, and as old as time, Beauty and the Beast, but the sorceress cursed the Beast is Belle's mother, a two I personally enjoy. Lead. I'd love to see a movie based on the first 3-pern novel, Dragonflight, Dragon Quest, The White Dragon. I did not enjoy James Cameron's Avatar very much, but I did leave that movie thinking that a decent pern movie would now be possible. Guards should be made by the guys who did the Cornetto Moth. Yes. Ender's Shadow. Done right, it would be a much better movie than Ender's Game was. Oryx and Crake by Margaret Atwood, and then make Year of the Flood and Madadam. Amazing series. It's ambitious and it'd require a director with an exemplary creative acumen to maintain a cohesive plot, but Gardens of the Moon by Steven Erikson would be a sumptuous, albeit convoluted, film. The books are highly contentious with readers vacillating between disorientation at the obscure character names and vagaries of the narrative, and exhilarating triumph at finally discerning what is going on. The author's warnings of confoundment in the preface are certainly vindicated. A Spy Among Friends, Philby and the Great Betrayal, by Ben McIntyre. It's a great non-fiction book about the story of Kim Philby, and Mi-6 agent W. Hulled speed for the Soviets for around 30 years. McIntyre wrote it so well. It was like reading a fiction book. I also read the translated version of The Count of Monte Cristo and, although it's already been made into a movie, a longer TV series would really do a brilliant book justice. Ice. Devolution, a first-hand account of the Rainier Sasquatch massacre would make an excellent horror movie, if it was done correctly. Movie, House of Dragons by Jessica Cluess. But if I can get a TV series, then Dead Witch Walking, and the rest of the Hollow series, by Kim Harrison. A Simops Foundation trilogy/quadrilogy. I know it's more than one book, but it's a fantastic story set over 1,000 years from several perspectives. Something filmed in a Pulp Fiction-esque way would be amazing. They're already making a TV show. Wow, I hope they do it justice. There will have to be a ridiculous number of series to properly tell the story and fill the characters' backgrounds. Not a book, but whatever, it's solo leveling. The Might Have Been by Joseph M. Shuster, about a baseball player who spends almost a decade playing in the minimum. He finally has a shot in the big leagues and has a devastating knee injury that derails his pro career. While he rehabs the injury, the chance at a lucrative job, a relationship, and starting a family all come up. Book flashes forward 30 years later, and he's the manager of a minor league baseball team regretting over the choices he made and the life he almost had. I honestly couldn't say Hullett will be fitting in this role. Maybe a Woody Harrelson or Matthew McConaughey come to mind. But you'd have to cast for his younger self as well. Well, it would be a great character study for sure. Would love to see Monkey Wrench Gang as a movie for a good time out in the desert. It's certainly written as if it could be. Hell, I think it's been considered, but shot down over the controversy of having private property as a target. Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy. With the right person helming it, it could be one hell of a western. We Are Legion. We Are Bob. Those books are so bloody interesting. There's a series I read as a kid called The Chronicles of Crestomancy by Diana Wynne-Jones, and I was always curious how the world would look and characters would sound outside of my imagination. Has anyone ever heard this series? I've never met anyone. W. Harlot has. East of Eden by John Steinbeck. I know there's already a movie version from the 80s, but they should come out with a current one, with Jet Li as Lee and Colin Farrell as Adam. I'd say any Brandon Sanderson book, but a movie probably wouldn't do them justice. Gotta be a high budget series instead. Promise of Blood by Brian McClellan. Take the French Revolution and throw in typical fireball throwing mages as well as gunpowder mages. W. Harlot can manipulate gunpowder in such a way as to change a musket ball's path after being red. And on top of that, there's people born with more mundane magic that's unique to them, such as never needing to sleep. Eep. I fucking love the Powder Mage books. Okays. Go. My Son. By Chaim Shapiro. Not a very well known book, but it's the autobiography of a guy. W. Harlot survived World War II in a series of insane NTS. If I remember correctly. TLY. The order of events went something like this. The Nazis invade Poland, and as they are getting to the author's hometown of Lomza, MZA, his mother tells him go, my son, to the USSR, SSR, which he does. Oh yes. He ends up on a Soviet collective farm after the Russians train him to drive a tractor. He stays for a year or so, then gets drafted to a Soviet labor battalion. He travels around the USSR fixing up battle damage for a while, and ends up in Stalingrad after the battle. TLE, where he sees his anti-Semitic Polish neighbor. W. Harlot joined the Nazis, get captured, and shot by the Red Army. Eventually, he deserts the labor battalion, because he wants to join a Russian-sponsored Polish unit and actually fight the Nazis. As is, he goes back to the collective, while he's trying to get into the Polish unit, but can't stay for long. B/C It's mad sus that a guy shows back up after being drafted by the Russians in WW2. The Polish unit accepts him, then kicks him out under false pretenses. B/C They don't like Jews. He obviously can't show back up at the old place. B/C A third time would be too crazy, so he somehow ends up in Kazakhstan. Don't remember how he got there. Haven't read the book in a minute. The original Polish group he tried to join gets wiped out, and after a short stay in Kazakhstan he successfully talks the NKVD into not arresting him. They caught him praying at an illegal synagogue, joins a new Polish unit, and gets sent to T-34 Tank Commander School. B/C of his tractor experience. While in the school, he refuses to abandon his gourd post to help a Soviet political officer find his wife's shoe, and as a punishment doesn't get to go on a field trip to pick up his new T-34 in person. He later realizes that the T-34 places directly across from HQ of the labor unit he deserted, and if he went he would have been recognized and shot for desertion. He goes on to fight through a bunch of Eastern Europe, and at some point, forget if it's Warsaw or somewhere in Germany, deserts the Polish army and gets help from Jewish refugee orgs to get the F out of Europe, and moves to the US. He lived near me, and though I never met him, my dad says he was an incredible man and I know his kids. W. Harlot are like the nicest people there. Apparently someone was considering turning this into a movie at some point, but he refused to let them add a love interest to the movie. B/C he was a religious man, and it went against his beliefs. And the movie people refused to make a movie W/O a love interest, so it never got made. He has pics of him and his tank crew, and pics related to various parts of the rest of the story in the book. There's this really good book I like called Star, author Danielle Steele. That could be a great movie. Basically, a girl is born beautiful into the world, so much so that even her own female family members hold a grudge against her. and throw her into the unknown world with no help for her after some complications happen. Larry Niven's Ring the World would have been impossible to film when it was first published. CGI has evolved sufficiently enough to bring it life. Would love to see the Infinite Rising Horizon and Nessus the Pearson's puppeteer to head it. 3-footed alien. Please click subscribe if you enjoyed this video.